Okay. Okay, Reb Deb, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think when it says recording in progress, you have to click on got it so that it's acknowledged. Anyway, hi, everybody, and welcome to sharing Shabbat, Kabbalat Shabbat with us. It's a very exciting new undertaking, and I think it will, I hope, be enjoyable for everybody. And so we're going to look into some of the customs, traditions, and highlights of personal observances and traditions for Kabbalat Shabbat. And we begin with the candles because that's the beginning. It's always the beginning. And we begin with a blessing. And I just want to share, I brought a show and tell. So can I do my show and tell? This is my my candle holder, and it looks small and low. I got it in Israel, and when I was there recently in Tel Aviv at one of the markets that sold all kinds of crafts. I also bought a talit when I was there. Shouldn't be like a total loss. And this is carved out of two different kinds of wood. And you can see, I don't know if you can see that there's brown on here and also turquoise. And then you put a tea light in. And so I use it for our congregational service every week because we've been on Zoom. So everybody sees it on my table in the back and we all light candles together. So I wanted to just share that as a way of beginning. And I did write an original blessing for Shabbat that I would like to share with you, and then talk a little bit about candles. That's where we are right now. And then have a conversation about candles. So it's a progressive discussion. We need one more, another one. Yeah, here. So I'd like to share your weekly beckoning, which is a prayer I wrote that is in my new book that's called Heart Whispers, Sharing Reflections with God. And so I would like to share this blessing with you. In the flickering light, you beckon me. In the candle's glow, I reach for you. In the work of the week, I often neglect you. I forget you, yet you are eternally here with me. I return to you once again at week's end. I sing your praises. I declare your oneness. I welcome the bride of Shabbat. I speak to you in whispers. I stare into the candle's glowing flames. In that flickering light, you beckon me. In the glowing light, I reach for you. Together, we enter the sanctuary of Shabbat.
Very nice.
Illustrated beautifully, Nina, once again. You've outdone yourself. And
Inspirational.
I wanted to share a little bit about candles. And yes, I think we can probably send out a copy of this. Yes, the question was asked in the.
Yep, for sure.
And talk a little bit about when you light your candles on Shabbat, you know, what memories and traditions come up for you. And, you know, also in terms of that also, who do you invite in? I always ask my community when we rise to light the candles together and we draw them, you know, put our hands, you know, this way. And I say, who are you drawing into the light? And, you know, who are you remembering? And they don't have to be someone who is no longer alive. It can be someone who just lives far away and you're drawing them in and inviting them to Shabbat. So when we finish that every week, I always say, I ask people who they've invited in, you know, and I always say to them, we have a big crowd here besides just the people on the screen. Wow, our Shabbat table and our Shabbat home is loaded with different people. So my question is, what memories or traditions come up for you when you light the candles? And what do you think of, you know, maybe when you gaze into the flames, or who are you inviting in? So all of those are fair game for any answers that anyone would like to. And Nancy, your hand is up, so you're first.
Sure. I'll start off just because I've been within a monthly Shabbat group, and they started a new tradition when you put your hands over the candles, where we waft the warmth to somebody that's not in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So
Nice.
kind of like what you're saying, but it's not that we're inviting them in. It's that who do we think of that we want to send these warm thoughts to?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not.
Norma?
When I bring in the candle, well, my mother, first of all, I have always called my mother and we light together her time and my time, but we're bringing the two generations together. Now that she's 98, it's a little difficult, so I light for both of us, but we have a family tradition that was started back, I guess, with my father's mother, that when I'm bringing in the candles and welcoming the Sabbath bride, I say, even as I these candles light, so may my children, the world's children's lives be bright. May God look down from heaven's height and turn earth's darkness into light. So
That's spectacular. That's spectacular.
Put it in the chat.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you if you could put that in the chat, please.
okay.
Yes, thank you. That would be
And then you'll
wonderful.
send it to all of us, Nina.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
me
putting
too.
all of these
Send it to
things
me.
together. That's what I'm
I
So
so
as
think
you-
about
about.
Thank
I
you,
think about my mother and my father and my grandmother, and I thank them for moving me to this place, because there was a time when I really was not very much of a practicing Jew, and it's been an evolution for me, and I always thank them every Friday night for somehow lighting that flame for me, and it
Thank
means
you.
a lot to me. It makes me feel connected to who I came from.
Thank you. Lori.
I
Lori.
think about my bubby Sarah, so Audrey Glickson, her mother, and I never seem to light my Shabbat candles on time. I just never do. It's probably from the years that I used to work 3 to 11:30 on Friday nights. And I said to my bubby many times, I got off work, it was 11:30, it was 12:05, I got home, and I finally got to start Shabbat. And she would say to me, why bother? It's already past the time. And I would always say, aren't you happy I'm lighting Shabbat candles? And she would smile and she'd give me the kind of look like a crazy young person. And so to this day, I still cannot get myself, we don't sit down for dinner when the sun is going down. We might be lighting candles and have dinner at 8:30 or 9. And that is when I light candles. And I always think of my bubby and her smile like, you do it. I'm proud of you. You're doing it, but it's not exactly right.
But it's Shabbat in the heart, Lori, right? And so
Yes.
that's when it starts for you.
That's
Robbie,
right.
your hand was up, I think. Am I right, Robbie? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I have to say, I don't always light them on time either. Probably because, with daylight savings time, sometimes my husband didn't get home from work and I didn't want to start Shabbat. My mother always did. And she always lit them on time. She used 3 candles. Her mother used 3 candles. My father's mother used 5 candles. And I have 2 of her candlesticks. One was from, and I'm not sure exactly who, it was either from her mother or her mother-in-law. And the other one was hers. And I just light 2. So I'd like to know a little bit more about why people light more lights.
So, and increasing the light is good. A lot of people light them for one for each family member. So maybe you've got 2 kids and they're not living home anymore, but you're lighting, for the number of people in your family. I mean, that is the custom I'm most familiar, with people doing. That's why they would have an increased number. But, as someone was talking, maybe it was Norma, I can't remember, but I was thinking to myself, it would be nice to light for my mother and grandmother, my parents, like on 1 candle, just because I don't want a million candles, burning in my house at once. But, to have for my parents, my in-laws, and my grandparents, to have those extra, because you know what, the other than this candlestick holder, which I showed you, the other candlestick holders belong to those people. I mean, they actually left them for us. And so why not invite them to be part of the tradition of Shabbat, the ritual of Shabbat, and make my own ritual. And I have to tell you that I'm really going to consider that, because that just struck a chord with me when you mentioned that. Because if we're bringing those people into the room and they're increasing, you know, the number of people celebrating with, they're also adding light. And why not bring their light into, you know, into the light of Shabbat? So thank you both for that. Between the two of you, I just put together a new custom for myself. And other people who had their hands up that I missed, please, if you would like to add to our traditions, just jump in. And
I have, oh, go ahead, Erica, sorry.
go ahead, and then Bamaya. Go ahead, Erica.
Oh, I always think of my childhood when I first learned about this tradition, which was in Europe at my grandparents' house. They're the ones that were more religious, you know, not my parents as much anymore. But so I'm thinking of my grandparents also, and lighting the candles. And
It's a very holy moment, you know, that many times before I recognize Bamaya and invite her, but as you're saying that, you know, it's a very holy moment to light those candles. And many times, often people rush through it. And, you know, and I always, when I do it with my community, I hold them there in that moment, and I make some conversation, and I add some comments, and I ask them who they're bringing in. Like I said before, who you're inviting and what do you remember about them? Because I think we should dwell in Shabbat, you know, and dwelling in opening the door at Kabbalat Shabbat is staying in that time, is really holding the Kedusha, you know, holding the holiness of that time. So just a thought. Let me get Bamaya first, because she's been patiently waiting, and then Norma, just unmute and go for it.
I had a question. So, you know, as a Jew by choice, I didn't grow up lighting candles, and I really appreciate everyone sharing about like ways that they have memories or hold people in their hearts while lighting the candles. And it's made me also decide to add one for an estranged family member, to sort of welcome them back in, you know, to the light, you know, as I draw the light towards myself. And I think I'm curious about when you say Kabbalat Shabbat, like I've heard it in a song, but I don't actually know like what that part, the first word means.
It's to receive Shabbat, to kabel, to receive it, to bring it in.
I really like the tradition. I started doing it last year, like 2 months before the high holidays, before Rosh Hashanah, just because everything pointed to it, like just taking time, taking a break, and disconnecting from like my agenda and recentering on the divine and my family. And now it's a regular part of what we do every Friday. And even so much so that my daughter, she's 11, she said, when I was trying to explain to her what the timeshare would be between her dad and I, like what days she'd be where in holidays, Jewish ones with me, others with her dad. And she said, Mom, where am I going to be on Shabbat? That was like the first question that she had, not when do I get to see dad, or like, it's like, where am I going to be on Shabbat? That just made me feel like it matters what I'm doing.
Okay, thank you. I saw 2 more hands, and I just want to say one thing. We have a lot to get through, and I'm cognizant of the time. So if I can take one more comment, and Norma, your hand was up first, if that's okay. And then if we can go to the next one, because maybe Audrey, your comment will
I'm
filter
going to
in.
save this. Eventually, in the 3 sessions, I'll tell the stories. It's how my parents met.
Oh, wow,
Okay.
that's lovely.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I was part of the student struggle for Soviet Jewry, and I was very actively involved in, excuse the expression, smuggling Jews from the former Soviet Union into the United States here because of the quota that would not allow them in. but I had a contact. You talk about candles. These are people who for 70 years weren't allowed to practice as Jews.
Yeah.
And the first thing I did for them is I made contact with Rabbi Schneerson of blessed memory, and he gave me his little candlesticks that he makes, and we made up a package of his candlesticks, candles, a challah, and a small bottle of wine, and we gave it to all of those Soviet Jews that we were working with at the time. So we had an overlapping between Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Chabad, but the common goal of keeping that light of Jewry alive.
Thank you. So as we welcome in Shabbat, we welcome the angels, because the angels join the group of people that we are welcoming into our community on Kabbalat Shabbat. And we're going to share with you in a minute a beautiful recording of Shalom Aleichem, but I want to talk to you a little bit first about a teaching on angels. So Shalom Aleichem is something that it's said that the men sang on the way home from services on Friday night as they were walking through the dark streets, so that they were singing loud and they were protected. The angels would protect them from people who might attack them on the streets who didn't like Jews too much. So the word for angel is malach, and they were both human and divine messengers. But the meaning evolved to only mean divine messengers over time, and that took on a more prominent role. And so as foreign influences cross-fertilized with Jewish culture, angelology, the actual study of angels, became more elaborate, and the angels took on names, they took on personalities, they took on specific job descriptions, if you will. And Judaism did not borrow from Christian representation the idea of the wings and the halos that are associated with angels. We don't do wings and halos in Judaism. Our angels, sometimes you can't even tell the difference. They could be sitting right next to you on the screen here. You could be in a box next to an angel. And so we would like to play for you Shalom Aleichem, which is a lovely recording. And then I'm going to ask you some angel questions and see what you think.
I also have just the words, if you'd like to share those, Reb Deb, before we get into the discussion. Just from our PowerPoint here.
Can you pinch larger?
Yeah, here we go.
Thanks for the elderly approaching 70 people. So the what I put in the chat was, you can Google her. Her name is Fortuna, Fortuna. You can put her on YouTube and you can pull up this recording. She's Brazilian. It's a Sephardi rendition. It's something I've used for probably the past 15 years when I teach and I want to do Shalom Aleichem. It's the best rendition I have ever heard of this, and the melody and the beat with the drum and everything is amazing. So the audio didn't come out too well here, but you can look it up, and it's, you know, it's a 5-minute clip and you should hear it. So when we greet the angels, we first bring peace upon them, and that they are messengers from God on high. And the 3 different verses that we have, the Boachem, we tell them to come in peace. And then they, you know, we say that they're, you know, we want to be blessed with peace, Barchuni l'shalom, and then they depart, Tzeitchem l'shalom. So they're coming, they're blessing, and they're leaving. And so if you think about that, I mean, and all of that with peace, they should all be blessed with peace. And I think the Chagall picture is a beautiful picture that is on the side of this, of the illustration. So my questions on Shalom Aleichem are, you know, you may think, gee, this is a really simple question, but it really isn't. Do you believe in angels? And do you have any personal angels that have been part of your life? And that's asking very personally about angels, but I also want to know, when you're thinking about that, if you can think of any modern day angels in the world. So who are your personal angels if you believe in angels? Who are they for you? And can you think of any modern day angels out in the larger world? Lisa?
Actually, when I was a young, probably less than 5 years old, angels came into my room. All right. They were blue and they were purple, and they just helped to comfort me as I was going to sleep. So that's probably why I like blue and purple, as my hair and most of my clothes are. So I always believed in angels because they were there. They were real to me as well.
Hold up 1 second. Nina, can you mute everybody, because
Yes,
we're
I
getting
figured. I didn't want to accidentally mute Lisa, but could everyone please mute themselves who is not speaking at the moment, so that we won't interrupt each other?
Thank you. We're getting background noise and it's
Yeah.
hard for me to hear, Lisa. Go ahead, Lisa. I'm sorry.
So anyways, like I said, angels were already real to me as a child. And I guess at certain times over my life, I felt those angels still, you know, comforting me, helping me out, looking over me. Like I was in the hospital as a 20-year-old in enteric isolation for a month. And so, you know, I needed something and they kind of showed up. But personal angels now, those are mostly friends that I have. Some of them just show me different things, different ways to look at the world. And so, so I guess I believe in angels all around.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. And, you know, the history of angels has shown, I've studied this and, you know, taught a little bit about it, that at times in Jewish history, when the times have been tougher, really bad for the Jews, increased persecution, whatever was going on, there were more angels were more present in our literature. You can actually track it through the literature, going straight through from biblical times through, you know, more contemporary times. So do you have angels? Anybody care to share your thoughts on angels?
I could jump in for a moment.
Judith?
Hi.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Judy. I feel like this isn't really in a true religious context. Maybe it is, but I think similar to, was it Lisa that was speaking?
Yeah.
I've had a lot of medical challenges, especially over the past couple of years. And the woman who's working with me, helping me with health problems now, she's a healer and medically, not just, religiously. Anyway, I met her at a point when nobody else could help me, and she has helped me. So I feel she is like a present day angel in my life. Other than that, I just remember back to my early 20s, driving around and having my car not start on the highway in heavy duty traffic, like big city time, rush hour traffic, and then not panicking and eventually the car starting. And I've thought I must have had angels of the Lord, being in a very bad neighborhood where it was very unsafe, Roxbury, Massachusetts, like Harlem, being stuck, and eventually the car starting. So I also do believe in angels. And it's interesting also you're sharing about during tough times in Jewish history.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to understand that more.
So maybe someday we can have a session, a special session, and learn all about the history of angels in Judaism. So yeah, maybe we can do that one day. And I'm wondering if you, in thinking about your own lives and any personal angels that have visited and who spend time with you, when you've needed them, I mean, what about the world today? When you turn on the news or you listen to things, we hear a lot of negative things for sure. But do you sometimes see any modern day angels that seem to have stepped into the life of the world or the life of the universe? And who might they be? What kind of people are they? I mean, our first responders, if they are not angels, I don't know who is. I mean, and it depends on how you frame that and how you look at that. But, there are others, people who have come to the rescue in difficult times. And so it depends how you conceptualize who is an angel for you, or what does an angel represent for you? Audrey, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, please.
That's okay. Actually, two people who were angels to me for many years were the Berrigan brothers.
Oh, the Berrigan brothers, how
Right.
interesting.
And they basically, when I was in beginning college, I decided I wanted to be a civil rights organizer as opposed to a professional at that moment, which of course my parents were horrified at. And they actually gave me a path into that life for about 10 years when I was a professional organizer and involved both on a national level and in the Midwest. But they were angels.
Audrey, that's so interesting when you said that. I thought of something, because angels are given part of who they are is that they're given a specific task by God to do something, to come to someone and to deliver a message of some sort of what the person's supposed to do. And it's like, God had a conduit to you through them. They were the malachim that came there. And, later teachings on angels say that once they've completed the task, their life is over. Their lifespan, the angel's lifespan is over. It's finished. That's what we learn in Jewish, in the Jewish stories and the Jewish lore, and that then their job is finished, and many times they don't have a name, they don't have a specific identity because they're really passing through, and so it's something to think about a little bit more as you, reflect on angels and whether they have meaning for you or they don't have meaning, for you personally, and for each person, it's different.
I try to look for the angels inside of myself now, as opposed to expecting just somebody who I may not even have a close relationship to, for some reason, for one specific moment in my life, take some significant role in my life. But I've kind of moved that into kind of digging inside of myself to find that. That's kind of what I call the Shehina.
Yeah, nice. And your internal angel. Robbie, did you have your hand up too? Please. Just unmute, Rob.
I used to attend an angel meditation.
Oh,
that happened on the second and fourth Shabbats at one of the local synagogues back in Indiana. So it was a guided meditation to experience the archangels. Michael, who brings compassion, Gabriel, who brings courage, Uriel, who brings knowing, and Raphael, who brings healing. And it was just wonderfully conducted, and the angels surrounded each of us. And I just thought, you know, this is, it was very moving.
So I just
That's
got up out of the frame for a minute to get something to read you since you brought that up. So on Kabbalat Shabbat in my Siddur that our community uses, there is a song, but I'll just read the English of the Hebrew. And it says, in the name of God, God of Yisrael, may Michael be on my right, and on my left, Gavriel, Uriel before me, behind me, Raphael, and over my head, surrounding me, Shechinat El. So you have
That's a
all
Debbie
your
Freeman
angels
song.
there. So, and you know, it has a tune, which I don't sing well, you know, I'm like the non-singing rabbi, but it does have like a little, you know, it says, B'Shem Hashem Elohei Yisrael, Me'eminei Michael, Umismole Gavriel, Umilfanei Uriel, Umeacharei Raphael, Va'al Roshi, Shechinat El, surrounding me over my head.
Debbie Friedman does a beautiful rendition of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. So that's in our prayer book, you know, that is there. And if okay, I think I want to move on to the next category so that we can fit everything in, which is.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
do you see that Maya's had her hand up for a while?
No, I did not. Because where is her box? Oh, it's up now. It's up there. Now that's why I didn't see you. Okay, please go, Maya. You moved from below to above. I wonder if that was symbolic of the angels. Go ahead.
Well, it's funny because I'm not sure that I believe that they're disembodied. I've always believed that angels are like acting in a human, like in a human body or a human sense, because that's how I've always experienced them. Like even though like I would have angels like visual representations in my home, like I don't ever experience them in a spiritual way like that. It's always an actual human who tells me something at exactly the right time, and then like you're saying, completely disappears out of the picture. So for example, very recently, I was at a doctor's appointment that I actually went to in person, which I never do anymore. And I was trying to get on the elevator to just get out. And like I had to wait several times because people were getting in and I just didn't want to be like in a closed space with people. And I hear someone coming, like noise, but I try to get in and press a button super fast and come to find out like there was a gentleman who was a dad of my son who's like in his mid-20s. His father, he used to bring him to the birthday parties and stuff when my son was like a first grader. He stuck his cane in the elevator because he was an older dad then. And then he gets in. But what ended up happening is he helped me through like some court process that I wasn't represented for. He said, like minutes after I found out my attorney wasn't showing up in court, he texts me out of the blue and says, "You have court today. Make sure you leave on time. Like go in and pray and then and sit quietly and make sure you get there early so you don't have to rush and take a snack because you might be there all day." Like all the directions that I didn't get from counsel all came from really somebody who was like a complete stranger. And now like I never hear from him. I wasn't expecting that we'd have like a friendship, but our kids were friends when they were little. It's like he appeared in a way that I could accept what he had to say. Now he's gone. That's how it always feels to me.
That's so interesting. Well, that's a real life story. I mean, those things are what the angels are made of, I think. From angels, from candles to angels to wine. What would it be without wine on Shabbat? So, and see, this is very interesting. When you put up Bamaya's box moved again. Like I was used to seeing her at the bottom, then she was at the top. Now she's moved. I guess it moves around. Let me talk a little bit about wine, and then we'll take a look at the slide. So in ancient Israel, wine was valued because it gladdens the heart, and also along with milk, it provided important dietary liquid in hot areas of the desert where the uncontaminated water was a rarity. I mean, you didn't want to drink the water, so you had to drink other things. And probably influenced by the Greeks, the Jews used wine for ritual purposes during the Hellenistic period, of history. But the Jews distinguished how they used it from the Greek practice, with special blessing before drinking the wine, teaching that it only should be had in moderation, and that it should not be prepared by non-Jews, lest Jews accidentally drink wine intended for pagan ceremonies. And so I always wondered about that, prohibition. And now, I learned more about that when I was preparing for this program this evening. So thinking about wine and the joy that wine brings, how I have a question that I'd like to ask, and we have the Kiddush up on the screen, the Kiddush over the wine, translated. Thank goodness for everybody who can't read the Hebrew, because everyone needs to access the prayer. And it says, and there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. The heaven and earth were finished in all their array. And on the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing. And God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it, God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done. So it's very God-filled, the Kiddush. And when we make something kadosh, or we make the Kiddush over the wine, we're raising the level of holiness to a higher level. So when we put Kedusha into something, holiness into something, we separate it and we make it a holier, a higher level of holiness. In thinking about the Kiddush and the blessing over the wine, I would like to know, wine is known as a symbol of joy, but I have a question before that about nature, because where does wine come from? The fruit of the vine, right? So how does blessing the wine, the ritual of blessing the wine, connect you to nature? And what joy do you find in Shabbat? So I'm happy for an answer to either of those questions. We'll only take a few, because I want to concentrate on the challah, because I have some interesting information about the challah and taking the challah. So I would take maybe 3 or 4 comments, quick ones on this, and then we're going to move forward. So on wine, and does it connect you to nature? Do you ever think about nature when you, and I will just say this, I have to just tell you, we rent space before COVID. My congregation rents space in a church, a Methodist, a Lutheran church, in our local area. So we were having a conversation about blessing the wine, because they come to our services sometimes. The pastor comes and the members come, and we have a study group. And they taught me that when they're done with their wine that's left over from ritual, the wine gets poured back into the ground. It's taken out of the building, and the custom is to return it to the earth, because those grapes grew up on the vine out in nature from the earth. But so my question is, how does blessing the wine, the ritual of blessing the wine, connect you to nature? And what joy do you find in Shabbat? Because wine is to increase your joy. Anyone, first of all, that hasn't spoken that would like to contribute something? Rarely do people not speak, but I figure I should ask if there's anyone who hasn't spoken. And if not, then it is open to all. Feel free. Do you feel connected to nature through the ritual of making Kiddush? Maybe you never thought of it that way. Wait, you're muted, Nina.
I was trying to.
Yeah, go ahead.
We can get wine from all different places now, but if you ever go to a vineyard, or you realize that wine is a very seasonal thing. The grapes growing is very seasonal. And also that there's so many things in nature that contribute to the growing of the grapes. We have to worry about if there's enough water, if there's too much water, and if there's bugs and all kinds of stuff. And so it's interesting because it's really a very ancient thing that is made and very tied to nature in terms of its having the right conditions and growing. So in that way, I think it connects me to nature. It definitely is a joyful thing to have wine on Shabbat.
Anybody else have any wine contributions to the conversation? I tell you through your comment and the thing about the nature, I will never think of wine in the same way again, the wine ritual in the same way again. It will have an increased dimension that sits in nature for me that I never had all these years. Thank you for that. Robbie?
Well, this is just a silly little story. Every night we would, my mother would light the candles before my father got home, and then we would, have wine and challah. And after we were finished with dinner, we even had little cups like about that big for us children. But as my sister and I were clearing the table, my mother would go and drink all the little drips of wine for everybody's little wine glass.
So that it shouldn't go to waste. Yeah.
No, and it just warms my heart to remember that. It didn't connect me to nature at all, but it connected me to my mother.
Thank you. Lori, last comment before we go to challah. Go ahead.
But before my father's mother, so my Bubby Ruth, before she passed away, she had a small little glass that was always in the china closet. And it was just an itty bitty glass. And she said that was her kiddush cup from when she was a child. And she said that she had always kept that. And I mean, she hadn't used it for years and years, but she'd always kept that with her memory. And she gave it to me and she said, maybe one day you will have someone to pass this on to, this for a child's sip, the first sip of wine. And so I just love that, Robbie, as you were sharing, your mother would have the little bits of the wine. So, and my Bubby had her own little mini, very small little wine cup.
Thank you. So from candles to Shalom Aleichem to the wine, the angels, what about the custom of taking challah? I want to talk about challah for a little bit because we have a lot of information on challah that we wanted to share together. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, the challah is the special bread for Shabbat and holidays. And it's always placed on the table and covered with a cloth or a white napkin if you don't have like a fancy cloth to cover it with. And it represents, that covering represents the dew that collected on the manna in the morning. So now we know what that covering is, other than being something my grandmother embroidered for me. It actually has a meaning. It has a deep spiritual meaning. And, the custom in some places is not to use a knife, which is an instrument of war, but to tear the challah. The challah comes in various shapes and sizes and has different meanings, which I'm sure you're going to share with me going forward. But I wanted to mention the custom of taking challah because not that many people know about it or do it. And the word challah itself means portion. And so in post-temple times, the rabbis decreed that a challah, in other words, a portion, which had to be set at least the size of an olive, so just this small, must be separated from the dough and burned. And it's still a tradition for Jewish bakers and observant homemakers to tear a tiny lump of the risen dough from any type of bread and to burn it, usually wrapped in foil, in the oven or on fire, and make a blessing. And the blessing made for the taking of challah, just so that if you've ever not heard it, is who sanctifies us with his commandments and commanded us to separate challah. So a common custom is to separate challah from the dough, but the blessing is to who's commanded us to separate challah. So how many people are familiar with the blessing? Does anyone use it? Okay, because I didn't figure there would be an overwhelming everybody doing it, but I really thought that the custom was worth being educated about. and hearing. So
Or
those, yeah. So I wanted to just, ask if anyone practices the ritual, which I saw a couple of hands, but to ask how you could make this ritual relevant today. It's an ancient, ancient ritual, but how can we bring it forward? Or is it something to just dismiss? Or does it have a meaning for you? And even if you're not doing it, what do you think? Robbie, go ahead.
Well, my grandmother, my mother's mother, her father was a baker in Russia.
Oh.
And she would always come to our house twice a year for 2 weeks and fill up our freezer with challah and strudel and mandel bread and knishes. And
Wow.
oh my gosh, my mother put a lock on the freezer because we'd get in there. I'm not kidding. So at any rate, one day I came home from school and there was this little burnt piece of challah sitting on the bottom of the oven. And she told me about that custom of taking the challah.
So that was the first time you learned about it. It's very interesting. Anybody else, anything with taking the challah or just any relevance it might have? How could we make it relevant today if people wanted to? Norma?
Well, it's been a tradition in my family always before when we do the blessing over the challah to take the first piece and say it's for God. And I always put it next to my Shabbat candles because we're talking about the sacrifice in temple times. And that's what that piece of challah is all about, that sacrifice that we're making and putting God first before us. So we happen to have somebody in our congregation who out of frustration has learned how to bake challah, and now she makes the most incredible challahs every Friday night.
Oh, wow. Others with hands up, anybody? Thank you, Norma. But Maya, your hand's up. Is it up from before or up next?
No, it's for this time.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So I guess I've thought about what Norma shared a lot because I don't understand like where the sacrifice still is because we no longer have a temple. And so I had taken like a 10-week class on Shabbat and learned about the practice, but it's not something that I'm doing, but I feel like I should. And I guess looking for a way to make it modern or like to make it matter and make it meaningful, because I have to say, like, theologically, it creates a bit of an issue for me because supposedly like Cayen's offering was of grain, and then Abel's was of like his firstlings of his flocks, so like the blood sacrifice. So to offer like the challah, like it seems inaccurate to cover this sacrifice, but then how else would I go about doing that when we don't have a temple? So I'm a little conflicted about it. Like I want to be able to do that, but it doesn't exactly feel accurate.
Okay, I think maybe Nancy wants to respond to you, so I wanted to let her.
I hear your pain because I think Shabbat's supposed to be all about joy. And sacrifice is certainly the kind of like the opposite of joy. And so I know that the challah thing was supposed to have been done before Shabbos started. But once Shabbos starts, then we don't want to be thinking about sacrifice. We want to be thinking about wonderful, happy times.
So as you said that, I'm thinking, what would I do? It's not my practice, to do the taking of the challah. But if I wanted to bring it into this time, I think I would take a small piece of challah, it's supposed to be like olive size, and I might offer it to God, not offer it, but invite God to my table. And that would be God's portion. And in that way, I'm bringing God in, I'm bringing God into my Shabbat, I'm bringing God into my family, I'm bringing God into my meal, and God's presence. And, for me, that would be meaningful, for me. But that's just a ritual I just created in 2 seconds, listening to your question and Nancy's answer. But, I'm sure if I put more time into it, I might think of some others. But, it would be wonderful to welcome God and bless God to eat with us at our table and to spend God's presence presence and some time on Shabbat with me and my family. Other comments on taking the challah, or, the, pardon me, the practice of that? Because we also wanted to ask if you had particular, I think we're going to collect these. Am I right, Nina, that if people have specifics, you could speak to that about in terms of, recipes they would want to share for challah, or particular shapes of challah that they've made, or, anything like that. We wanted to ask you about sharing that with us so that we could compile that and put that together, that, and if anyone has any closing stories as we head down the home stretch here. So please feel free to offer a last comment on this topic.
I see Lori.
I have a question about challah. Have you heard of a key challah, where people bake the challah as a key, and can you address that, right?
Yeah, I used to know the answer to that, and it's like one of many shapes with the key challah. I'm going to have to Google it again, Lori, because I don't remember it. It was like contained in a really large piece of information that I had on challah.
Okay.
It's called a shitzel.
The key challah. So what do you know about it? Because I don't remember a thing about it.
I can't remember. It's in relation to some holiday, but I don't know when. And you shape it in the shape of a key.
Well,
And you can
I'll look it up. Thank you.
Yes, I want to say something else also about the challah cover. Another, besides representing.
I have it.
you, what?
I have the answer when you're done. I'll share it.
I just want to say that there's a tradition also that the challah, Hamotzi is the last prayer we say. We do the blessing on the candles, then we do the kiddush, then we do the challah. And the midrash is we didn't want the challah to be embarrassed that she had to wait so long. So we cover her with a cover and take it off just before the blessing.
Here's your key challah. It's called a shlisel challah, or key challah. It's made on the Shabbat after Pesach, and it's said to be a segula, a treasure for livelihood and parnassah, for income, that you should be successful. A key is placed into the challah dough while it's being braided, and some even shape their challah like a key. So that is what it is. And, people have written in and answered, it's for good fortune in the year ahead, to sort of, so that fortune will turn, it will like literally turn, and your parnassah will be good. You'll make a good living. You'll be successful. Any other comments? Yeah, you're welcome. That was a quick look up. Thank goodness I found it. Lisa?
Right now, it's October. There's recently been a connection between making pink challah and breast cancer and things like that. So I'm assuming that's not, I don't know if it's really halakhically okay, but it's something that actually makes people who may not have made challah do so because of that association.
Yeah, that's an incredibly meaningful, it's a contemporary, tradition now that we have. Any others, anything that people are thinking of? We're rounding on to 8:30, so I want to make sure we close on time. And, just to really thank everybody for coming to this new undertaking that we have, 2 more parts of this. It's a 3-parter, am I right, that we're doing? And so it's going to unfold more deeply as we go forward with more aspects of Kabbalat Shabbat and sharing Shabbat, and in general. And we hope that you'll consider coming back, and we hope that you liked it for the first time. So hopefully everyone had a nice evening together sharing.
Yes, the next one will be December 14th. We have some other things that are going to be happening before that. And also, anyone who has some traditions in their family that they'd like to include in this booklet. I took notes on some of the things you said, and I'm certainly going to put them in. I'm going to add some from my family that I didn't have time to talk about. And I'm hoping that when I send out the follow-up email, if you have a story or a poem or a memory that you'd like to share and have included in our booklet, just, hit return and send it to me, and I'll include it.
And thank you all very much for joining us tonight. We hope to see you again sooner than December 14th at some of our other programs. So,
absolutely.
Thank you. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you so much. So lovely. Thank you.
You're welcome.